What do you do when you take two deuteragonists who happen to be quote-unquote prodigies for their respective clans, who have their own respective family issues? You make them fight each other to the death. And that is what we're going to be doing here with Megumi Fushiguro versus Killua Zoldyck, JJK versus hunterxhunter. These series are compared all the time, very similar in power scaling, so I want to try my hand at it with these two. So let's get into it. Megumi Fushiguro, the son of Tochi Fushiguro, and the chosen one for the 10 Shadows technique, passed down through the Zenin clan. Megumi in the JJK verse is in like a middle ground. He beats a lot of people, but in terms of the upper echelon of power, he would struggle extremely hard, or he flat out gets destroyed. And I'm going to be talking about Megumi in the manga currently, which I will blur a couple things or put a little timestamp for when the manga stuff will be on screen. And on part, just skip ahead if you also want to. Megumi's speed in the series isn't really a highlighted aspect of his fighting prowess. Megumi is one of those characters where he has more reaction speed feats than he does offensive speed feats. He was able to block Toji a couple times in their sudden fight, but I'd be hesitant to put him anywhere near Toji, especially the one that was in Shibuya. And then you have Yuji, who he's teamed up with in fights, but Yuji is a special physical specimen that Megumi is a tier under. Unfortunately, Megumi falls victim to the speed test dummy of the series because he's been blitzed by Todo and Sukuna twice. But in hand-to-hand combat, Megumi is respectable. The closest comp would be like a hidden inventory Geto, especially being a Shikigami user. So he's mainly trying to control the mid-range of a fight, even though he's at his best fighting with a sword. So his speed in the JJK verse is like a B minus, while his strength would be a B minus to a C. However, what makes Megumi dangerous is not his physicality, but his 10 shadows. 10 shadows Shikigami that must be exercised by the user in order to have full control. 10 shadows effectively makes Megumi more tactful and a strategy fighter. He will rarely have an opportunity to just completely overwhelm someone at this point, so what he lacks in top tier speed and strength, he makes up for in versatility for offense, defense, and mobility. Now I'm going to get the big joker out of the way now. Maharaga is, of course, Megumi's strongest shadow in literally everything. In this versus battle, he will not be counted for because it'd just be an automatic win for Megumi. Maharaga's adaptability is one of the most ridiculous things in JJK and will remain an unbelievable threat that can only really be conquered by a handful of people. But Megumi has proven to win fights without needing him. His most reliable shadow being Divine Dog Totality, with bites and claws strong enough to chew into special grade threats. Hanami being a special grade with high durability is the best feat Divine Dog has, but it has inherently gotten stronger since then. It proves to be Megumi's safest shadow as it grants him offensive capabilities to team up on opponents. He can take a couple decent hits as well before it reaches his limit. Divine Dog against regular humans did this to Reggie, so it's a good choice that you might want to avoid getting attacked by him if you can. Now, Nue is great for mobility and an airborne attacker who can be a blindside bandit as well. Nue's lightning doesn't have the greatest feats, except it technically does have one, but that wasn't Megumi, unfortunately. Now, Megumi can use Nue for mainly flight. Defense, I think Max Elephant and Orochi will be his best options. Orochi mainly for capture, and Max Elephant can keep enemies away and take a big hit or two. Or, worst case scenario, just drop that big bitch on their head. Rapid Escape is only good for divergence and ironically has worked nearly every time he's used it. Similar to Rapid Escape, the frogs are only good for divergence or momentarily stopping an opponent, and then he can combine Shikigami as well with the examples of Wells Unknown Abyss, a combo of Nue and frogs, which are just angel frogs essentially. An extension of his technique is the ability to hide in his own shadow and sneak around, like he did in the Fight Club, choking off some random grunt. Last but not least, being the incomplete domain Chimera Shadow Garden, which is a big shadow pool where multiple shadows can spawn from the depths of the domain and deal a barrage of damage towards whoever is trapped within the domain. I don't normally use these terms when I do this, but for the hardcore power scalers, Megumi is city block level, but Maharaga around town to city at a peak. But for regular people like myself, he's a B+ sorcerer that can peak to A. For those wondering about the other shadows, I won't bring them into this fight because it wasn't him who used those other four. So any of those feats won't play a factor into this one. Now, Megumi versus Reggie is the best example of how special Megumi is as a fighter. Extremely high battle IQ, very resourceful and quick on his feet. Using his incomplete domain inside a gym and using the gym as a pseudo barrier is great stuff. And trying to counter Reggie's counter with his own domain was really insane. Rarely do you see a sorcerer's weakness get exploited, and in turns, he's still able to one-up him. And of course, hiding Divine Dog from the very beginning of the fight, pretending that he was dead, and bringing him back at the perfect moment to sneak attack Reggie was peak. Megumi has a lot in his bag, and it's crazy to think he still didn't scratch the surface of what he can really do with the 10 Shadows. Killua Zoldyck, the son of Silver Zoldyck and grandson of Xeno Zoldyck. Killua is a transmutation nen user that shapes his nen aura into electricity due to a great family bonding where they tortured him via shock therapy. Unlike Megumi, Killua's physical capabilities are much more impressive, especially for his age. Killua's speed as an assassin is the basis of his attack style. We've seen him completely speed blitz multiple people. In assassin mode, we all remember when he snatched the heart out of the inmate's chest without him even noticing. Even some of his natural speed, like he did circling Netero in their little scrimmage during the Heaven's Arena arc, was great and left after images, so it lets you know how quick he was actually moving. Obviously, it didn't look as effective because it's Netero of all people. And in the Chimera Ant arc, he's killed a couple ants purely off instinct and speed alone. Beheading one with his bare hands, breaking the neck of another after countering an attack from his blind spot. Killua is the prototypical assassin character for Hunter x Hunter because most of his fights don't typically go long. He's more so about precise, defective kills. Now, the peak of Killua's speed, however, is when he enters God speed. Killua's electricity in general takes time to build and charge up, but when he's able to use God speed, his reaction speed effectively doubles, and of course his speed in general is enhanced. Now, post Illumi Needle, his best feat was being able to attack Yuppie and flee without taking damage in this state. And for those who don't know or remember, the post Illumi Needle pretty much is when Killua is out of that mindset of I can only attack people that I know are weaker than me or are kind of at the same level. Anyone that was stronger than him or he wasn't really sure of, he didn't really even attempt to go after that fight or that kill because he was afraid of losing. Once he took that needle out, that sense of doubt and fear was completely gone. And in the fight with Yuppie, if he still had that needle in his head, he would be nowhere near that fight, even if he was getting help from other fighters. And the reason this is impressive is because Yuppie in his awakened Chimera state is enhanced all across the board, physically, strength, speed, defense, plus metamorphosis where he can change his body into whatever weapon he desires. Yuppie was a problem for everyone. And realistically, the only person that can entertain taking him on 1v1 was Netero, but he was busy taking on another monster who was stronger than him in Meron. That's basically the end of Killua as a hunter for now, because in the manga, he doesn't have a focus at all due to the current arc. Killua has A to fringe A+ speed in his verse. And strength wise, I will put him around B-, mainly because Killua's hand sharpened and makes it easier for him to pierce through flesh. But at the same time, I wouldn't say Killua is someone I would avoid taking a punch from in comparison to someone like Gon or Hisoka. His biggest weakness is being long drawn out fights. His electricity needs charging and he's sometimes not the most durable. Both fighters have their own notable weaknesses. On paper, you think Megumi being much slower in comparison to Killua being a bigger weakness than Killua's lack of power output or durability. But the way Killua would have to win this is pretty much catching Megumi in a blind spot or when he's unable to summon a shadow. He has to keep his close quarters as possible to be really effective, because Megumi's new way alone eliminates any of Killua's nen electricity, while at the same time, Megumi can't attack with new way because Killua would either use it to charge or just completely block it out in general. Now, Megumi's best shadows in this fight would be Demon Dog's Totality and Max Elephant, and honestly, Orochi wouldn't be the worst choice either, but if Killua is in Godspeed, I don't see that being a viable option. Something like the frogs be a momentary thing. I think Killua in Godspeed is his best option to completely blitz Megumi and whatever shadow he has out as well. However, Megumi does have the option of diving into his own shadow, which would waste time off of something like a Godspeed. But Godspeed, when he's attacking, drains it quicker than when he's using it, for example, like a movement. Killua could win by getting past all of Megumi's tactics, and if he just gets close in Godspeed, it pierces his heart, albeit with the curse energy or enhanced body, it would be more difficult than just saying that. I just see more options of Megumi playing defense than anything else. As for the domain expansion, Megumi inherently slowing down his opponents not only with the shadow pool but with using multiple shadows at the same time would be too much for Killua in a regular state. In Chimera Shadow Garden, with being grabbed by the legs from frog tongues while also being hit with a max elephant instead of New Ways, of course, or another demon dog. But in Godspeed against Chimera Shadow Garden, Megumi would definitely be maximizing those shadow clones he can develop as well, because I highly doubt that the little sludge shadows will be enough to slow down Killua, on top of forcing Killua to exert as much nen aura as he can, so he does have that option. However, if Killua goes the evasive route to save energy in the domain, he can outlast Megumi as a whole. So this one is relatively closer than I initially thought going in. For Megumi, he has to play the middle game perfect. He can fight hand to hand with Killua, but it's too dangerous being that close to Killua, meaning he's going to have to use his sword for defense purposes and not leaving his vitals open at all. He can handle his nen electricity very well, and a domain is a bigger risk than you'd want it to be, especially since it's a incomplete domain. While for Killua, speed is going to carry, and Godspeed is a tough comp for Megumi. But I think Killua gets the win in a mid to potential high diff. Literally, if Megumi can force Killua to fight a way he doesn't want to, he might be able to push it a little harder. Godspeed counters so much of Megumi's arsenal, it'd be hard for Megumi to overcome that speed gap. I think it definitely would be more interesting if Megumi had access to all shadows, such as the deer just for healing, and the nullifies curse technique, so that is a huge bonus for him if he could have used it. Piercing Bull would actually give him a stall option and an attack, considering it locks on the targets and it's a full speed charge, but he didn't use them himself, so I wanted to keep it canon. Of course, if Maharaga was available, Megumi's beating the dog shit out of Killua. But this essentially comes down to stall versus speed, and Megumi's only real option of finishing him off is if Divine Dog can literally get an attack off on Killua, but I don't think Killua will let that happen, especially in Godspeed. So the Zoldyck Prodigal Assassin is getting the W in this fight. That's my thoughts on the versus battle. Let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about it. Do you think Megumi wins? Do you think Killua wins? I think in an actual fight, or like if somebody was like the magically animated, I think it'd be kind of cool to see it play out. But basically, Megumi would just need way more going for him than Killua would have on his side. Subscribe if you enjoyed. Leave a like. I'll holler at you on the next one. Peace.